must end. There is nowhere to run. No mercy. Your will is not your own. Bow to your master.
There must always be a Lich King.
The Lich King is one of the most recognizable and established characters in the entire Warcraft universe. Master of the Scourge and possessed by the Helm of Domination, the Lich King wields the power of the Scourge to unleash destruction upon those who oppose him. Now, we aren't going to be talking about Bolvar Fordragon specifically, or even Arthas Menethil, or even ner'zhul. We're going further back. This video will detail his evolution since he was introduced into the Warcraft universe, both his model and his demeanor. Our journey starts all the way back with Kil'jaeden, the Eredar demon lord and leader of the Burning Legion. Once upon a time fought alongside his colleagues Archimonde and Velen, but he was quickly corrupted by Sargeras alongside Archimonde because they decided to accept his pact of ultimate power. 15,000 years later, Kil'jaeden was ordered to find an army so he could invade worlds. He searched the Nether and then stumbled upon Draenor. It was actually Talgath, who was Kil'jaeden's scout, who found it, since it reeked of Draenei magic. Draenor also means exile's refuge in Eredin. Kil'jaeden specifically honed in on the orcs that roamed this land and went straight for the orcish horde's leader, ner'zhul. Talgath informed the Deceiver about ner'zhul and specifically his deceased mate, Rulkan. So Kil'jaeden impersonated the spirit of Rulkan and spoke to ner'zhul about the horrid Draenei, which she eventually introduced ner'zhul to Kil'jaeden. Kil'jaeden would speak to ner'zhul about the Draenei plotting to take out the orcs, so ner'zhul got the rest of the orcish clans to fight the Draenei. It took him a minute, but ner'zhul noticed the resemblance between the Draenei and Kil'jaeden, and this puzzled him greatly, so he set off to Oshugan in Nagrin to seek answers from the spirits. The spirits thought of ner'zhul as a monster, and the real Rulkan revealed that Kil'jaeden had been manipulating him. Gul'dan, who was ner'zhul's apprentice, had been eavesdropping on the conversation. Greedy for his own power, Gul'dan informed Kil'jaeden of ner'zhul's doing, so Kil'jaeden told Gul'dan to lead the orcs, and he did, into anguish and despair. Gul'dan was so obsessed with power at this point that he became careless, and thinking he was the greatest being in the universe, he allowed his former teacher to take a look at the Shadow Council documents because he just didn't care. ner'zhul found out that Kil'jaeden has planned to feed the blood of Manoroth to the orcs, so he could use them as an army to destroy worlds. The rest of the orc leaders followed Gul'dan at this point, except one. ner'zhul informed Durotan of the Frostwolf clan of Kil'jaeden and Gul'dan's doing, and Durotan refused to allow his clan to drink the blood of Manoroth. Durotan and his mate Draka were the only ones aware of ner'zhul's actions, and this is a secret that died with them. Today, no one has any idea that one of Azeroth's greatest enemies saved the orcs from complete annihilation. Well, except us, since we have books. Following the Horde's defeat in the Second War, the Alliance pushed them back through the Dark Portal, destroying it. Tyr and Gorfinn thought of opening new portals in Draenor to discover other worlds that the orcs can conquer, so Tyr went to ner'zhul and asked him to lead the Horde once again. After some persuasion, ner'zhul complied, but needed some artifacts before he could open up these portals. He desired the Skull of Gul'dan, the Book of Medivh, the Jeweled Scepter of Sargeras, and the Eye of Dalaran. ner'zhul acquired the Skull of Gul'dan, who by the way died due to his thirst of power. He raised the Tomb of Sargeras to seek greater power, and was torn apart by demons unleashed from it. The possession of the skull began to corrupt ner'zhul to some extent, as Gul'dan spoke to him through his last remains. Once he acquired all these artifacts, ner'zhul began to open up portals throughout Draenor. Feeling the surge of power, he stopped caring about the well-being of the Horde, and focused on his own power. He commanded those who followed closely to him to go through the portals without caring about the Horde. This vast and ample amount of power tore Draenor apart, turning it into Outland. These portals led to the Twisting Nether, where Kil'jaeden was waiting for them. The Deceiver killed all who followed ner'zhul and tore the shaman's body apart, torturing him. This only left ner'zhul's spirit intact. The Natharzim, otherwise known as the Dreadlords, experimented with the undead during the War of the Ancients, so this gave Kil'jaeden an idea. Why not create an army of enslaved undead who are under control of a single entity? So Kil'jaeden gave the spirit of ner'zhul a choice. Either spend the rest of eternity as a spirit being tortured, or become the ruler of an army of undead. Ner'zhul chose the latter, and thus the Lich King was born. Kil'jaeden didn't want to take any chances, so he didn't give the Lich King a body. The ner'zhul, who served Kil'jaeden, crafted the Helm of Domination along with the Plate of the Damned and bound Ner'zhul's spirit to it. He was encased in a block of ice and shot through the Great Beyond, landing in Northrend, where he had increased power and could control the Scourge through his tremendous mental abilities. Kil'jaeden ordered the ner'zhul to watch over the Lich King and appointed Tigandrius to lead them. The Lich King then began a war with the kingdom of Azjol Nerub, who were resistant to his undead plague. This was known as the War of the Spider and lasted 10 years, resulting in the Lich King's first triumph. The Dreadlords urged Ner'zhul to wreak havoc upon all of Azeroth to get ready for the invasion of the Burning Legion, so Ner'zhul used his powers to reach out to any dark souls amongst Azeroth to hear his call. Kel'Thuzad, a mage and member of the Dalaran's Kirin answered him. Ner'zhul quickly corrupted Kel'Thuzad to serve as part of the Cult of the Damned. This was a cult to worship the Lich King and aid in his undead armies. Kel'Thuzad and the Dreadlord Mal'Ganis began paving the way for the Burning Legion, but Ner'zhul had other plans. Prince Arthas Menethil and Lady Jaina Proudmoore then scoured Lordaeron to find the source of this undead plague. Arthas then killed Kel'Thuzad and ordered for all life in Stratholme to be purged so they wouldn't add to Mal'Ganis' undead army. Mal'Ganis escaped to Northrend, and Uther the Lightbringer warned Arthas that he was losing his hold on humanity. Arthas tracked the source of this plague to Northrend and swore to kill its supposed leader, Mal'Ganis. Arthas ran into an old friend, Muradin Bronzebeard. Muradin led Arthas to a legendary weapon that they hoped would help fight the Scourge. They searched for this blade by destroying nearby undead camps, while also looking for Mal'Ganis. Arthas received a message from Uther and Tyrannus Menethil, his father, to return home, but Arthas had no intention of returning until Mal'Ganis was dead. Arthas went so far as to burn his own ships that went to Eastern Kingdom so his men couldn't leave and were forced to help him in Northrend. This act undoubtedly disgusted Muradin. Arthas, Muradin, and a small group of men traveled through a waygate to where they believed Frostmourne was. The Guardian stopped them in their tracks and warned them to not approach the sword. This Guardian fell and Arthas and Muradin moved forward. As they approached the sword, Muradin read an inscription that said that the blade was cursed, so he told Arthas, "Oh, leave it be, Arthas, forget this business and lead your men home." Arthas was too far at this point to back out and ask the spirits of the cavern to free Frostmourne. They did, and Muradin was struck by a piece of ice. Arthas went to help him, but was dissuaded by Frostmourne, so he threw his hammer, Light's Vengeance, aside and took the corrupted blade of Frostmourne. He then left Muradin to die. Turns out Muradin survived his wounds and actually suffers from amnesia. Arthas then went toe-to-toe with Mal'Ganis, and the Dreadlord told him that the voice he was hearing was of the Lich King and not him. Arthas said that the voice was telling him to kill Mal'Ganis. This surprised Mal'Ganis, and Arthas struck him dead. Now corrupted by Frostmourne and being led by the Lich King, Arthas led the Scourge against his own kingdom, Lordaeron, killing his own father in the process, Tyrannus Menethil. He then killed Uther the Lightbringer. Arthas then took the Scourge up north to Quel'Thalas to resurrect Kel'Thuzad, since he could summon Archimonde. Silvermoon was ravaged and the High Elves died, including Sylvanas Windrunner. Arthas resurrected the High Elven Ranger General into an undead banshee, serving him. The island of Quel'Danos laid in ruins, and they used the Sunwell to resurrect Kel'Thuzad into a Lich. Ner'zhul's minions then laid siege upon Dalaran to retrieve Medivh's spellbook, which Kel'Thuzad needed to summon Archimonde. Kel'Thuzad commented that Medivh's knowledge of demons was a bit staggering and alarming. He was much more powerful than anyone imagined. Archimonde was summoned outside of Dalaran, and he stripped the Lich King of his control of the undead and gave it to Tigandrius and the Dreadlords. However, he forgot to return the Frozen Throne to Kil'jaeden, so the Lich King still loomed as a threat. The Burning Legion then laid siege upon Ashenvale, and Illidan Stormrage was released from prison after 10,000 years in captivity. The Lich King then commanded Arthas to go to Kalimdor to tell Illidan about the Skull of Gul'dan and its power. Arthas and Illidan began to fight, but they were evenly matched. Illidan halted the duel and asked what Arthas wanted of him. Arthas explained that his master knew of Illidan's thirst for power and described the Skull of Gul'dan and its power. So Illidan sought this power out. Defended by a demon gate, Illidan and his forces had to fight their way to the artifact. Illidan was driven by his thirst for power, as he felt that this was his last chance to redeem himself in the eyes of Tyrande. He managed to get a hold of the skull, and it transformed him into a demon. He then destroyed Tigandrius and his demonic forces. This pleased the Lich King, and without Tigandrius' support, Archimonde was defeated at Mount Hyjal. Kil'jaeden then confronted Illidan and made him an offer he couldn't refuse. The Deceiver knew that his creation, the Lich King, was out of control, so Kil'jaeden wanted Illidan to kill Ner'zhul, and he'd receive untold power and a place amongst the Burning Legion. Illidan agreed. Using the memories of Gul'dan, Illidan went to the tomb of Sargeras with the help of Lady Vash and her Naga to acquire the remains of Sargeras. His eye. That's what he wanted. Sargeras's eye. He took it to Dalaran and used delay energy to empower it and unleash its power towards Icecrown Citadel. Malfurion Stormrage intervened to stop the spell because he sensed that it was damaging the world, but the eye damaged ner'zhul enough for him to begin losing his power rapidly. Over in Lordaeron, Arthas noticed he was losing his power as well, since his power came directly from the Frozen Throne. Ner'zhul called to Arthas to meet him at the Frozen Throne immediately. Arthas was forced to leave an ongoing civil war within Lordaeron. One side was the undead forces led by Sylvanas Windrunner, who no longer served Arthas since his power has dwindled, and the other side were the Dreadlords, Varimathras, Deathrock, and Balnazar, led by Kel'Thuzad. Sylvanas was of course victorious, and this is where they claimed the ruined city as their home, known as the Undercity. Once Arthas arrived in Northrend, Illidan's Naga and Blood Elves waited for Arthas and battled him. Arthas fought through them all until he reached Prince Kael'thas. Kael'thas tried to use the fact that Jaina hated Arthas against him, but it didn't seem to be effective. Arthas forced Kael'thas to flee, and Arthas finally reached the Frozen Throne, where Illidan was waiting. An intense battle commenced, where Illidan began to have the upper hand with his newfound demon powers, but Arthas sliced him across the chest with Frostmourne, gravely wounding Illidan. Instead of finishing him off, Arthas left Illidan's body and told him to leave Azeroth and never return. Arthas made his way to the top of the Frozen Throne as voices from Uther and Muradin warned him of what was to come. As he approached the throne, he saw the suit of armor that ner'zhul's spirit was tied to, and heard voices from Medivh warning Jaina. Your young prince will find only death in the cold north. Then finally a whisper from ner'zhul saying, return the blade. Complete the cycle, release me from this prison. Arthas then lunged Frostmourne into the Frozen Throne, exploding it, and the Helm of Domination laid at his feet. Arthas picked it up and placed it upon his head, making him the new Lich King. Ner'zhul then whispered to Arthas, now we are one. Many years later, the Lich King sat atop the Frozen Throne as the different personas swirled in his head. Arthas didn't like this, so inside his mind, Arthas Menethil plunged Frostmourne inside ner'zhul, killing his spirit, making Arthas the sole Lich King. Now fast forward all the way to Wrath of the Lich King. The Lich King finally awakened after decades and journeyed to Sindragosa's Fall, where he raised the massive dragon. The capital cities of Azeroth began receiving infected grain. Once the citizens ate it, they turned into ghouls. Necropolies were appearing all over the world, marking this the Second Scourge War. Warchief Thrall and King Varian Wrynn launched an assault onto Northrend to deal with the Lich King. This pleased Arthas since he wanted to resurrect the dead adventurers to serve him. The Scourge, led by Darien Mograine, then attacked Untitled Chapter, but it was successfully defended by the Argent Dawn. The spirit of Alexandros Mograine, the original Ashbringer and Darien's father, appeared to speak to Darien, but the Lich King arrived and sealed Alexandros' soul away. Darien felt betrayed by the Lich King, so he lunged at him, only to be swatted away. The Argent Dawn then charged the Lich King, but they really stood no chance against the leader of the Scourge. Darien then tossed the corrupted Ashbringer to Tyrion Forgering, who cleansed it and struck the Lich King with it. This stunned him and made him retreat, as he told Tyrion that the next time they'd meet, it wouldn't be on holy ground. This battle led to the creation of the Argent Crusade, led by Tyrion Forgering, and Knights of the Ebon Blade, led by Darien Mograine. Over at the Wrathgate were the Horde and Alliance forming a temporary pact to fight the Scourge. The Alliance led by Bolvar Fordragon, and the Horde led by Saurfang the Younger. The Lich King finally entered the battlefield and took out Saurfang the Younger, taking his soul into Frostmourne to later be a raid boss in ICC. Before Bolvar and the Lich King fought, Grand Apothecary Putris, chief of the Forsaken's Royal Apothecary Society and creator of the New Plague, unleashed this plague upon the land, onto both the Horde and Alliance. This took out most of the Alliance, Horde, Scourge, and even Bolvar Fordragon, and led the Lich King to retreat into the Citadel. In the frozen halls of Icecrown Citadel were Alliance and Horde adventurers led by Jaina Proudmoore and Sylvanas Windrunner. They spotted Frostmourne, and out came the spirit of Uther the Lightbringer. He warned them that Arthas could see what Frostmourne sees, so he was on his way. Uther finally told them that Arthas had to be slayed where he emerged with ner'zhul, atop the Frozen Throne, and once slain, someone had to take his place as the Lich King to keep the Scourge in check. Arthas enters the room as Uther's spirit is sucked back into Frostmourne. He then leaves the room as Jaina and Sylvanas chase after him. They quickly find out that they can't do any real damage to Arthas, so at the last minute before their demise, the Skybreaker and Orgrim's hammer comes to rescue them and the adventurers. Then the adventurers gather a raid size of 10 or 25 to storm the Citadel, and with the help of Tyrion Forgering, made their way to the top of the Citadel where the Lich King waited for them. He encased Tyrion in a block of ice so he could watch the battle commence. This was part of Arthas' plan all along, because just before he was mortally wounded, he laid a devastating blow, killing all of the adventurers and started to resurrect them to serve him. Before he could finish, Fordring called for a final blessing of light and emerged from the ice and shattered Frostmourne with the Ashbringer. The spirits fled out from Frostmourne and resurrected the champions to get the final blow on the Lich King. Arthas then laid there, defeated. Tyrannus' spirit held Arthas in his dying breath, as he let Tyrion know that the Scourge must always have a master to control them. Tyrion knew what he had to do, so he picked up the Lich King's crown and prepared to take the mantle as the new Lich King, but was stopped by a toasty Bolvar Fordragon, who was chained up at the top of the Frozen Throne. Tyrion approached Bolvar as Bolvar said he has no place left living, and Tyrion still had duties to perform. Bolvar was willing to take the powers for himself in order to keep the Scourge in check, so Tyrion did just that. He placed the Helm of Domination upon Bolvar Fordragon's head, and the Frozen Throne began to envelop him, making Bolvar Fordragon the next Lich King. Bolvar finally told Tyrion to tell the world that the Lich King is dead, and Bolvar Fordragon died with him. Now we pass a few expansions until we get to Legion. A Legion invasion began on Azeroth, which awoken the Lich King, since a threat to Azeroth was a threat to him. The Lich King contacted High Lord Darion Mograine and wanted him to assemble a team to fight the Legion. He also aided adventurers in their artifact quest chain. This included the shards of Frostmourne used for Frost Death Knights. The new reformation of the Four Horsemen was underway. Commander Thoris Trollbane of Stormguard Keep, High Inquisitor Whitemane of the Scarlet Crusade, Nazgrim, the Orc General, and High Lord Mograine. Before Mograine joined the ranks of the Four Horsemen, the Lich King tried to get Tyrion Fortring, who fell at the Broken Shores. He wanted to resurrect Tyrion into a Death Knight, but the powers of light were overwhelming, and they were eventually thrown out of Light's Hope Chapel by Lady Liadrin. Then finally, in battle for Azeroth, Vol'jin, the late war chief of the Horde, traveled to the Frozen Throne with Bane Bloodhoof, Talanji, and a Horde adventurer to figure out who spoke to him to name Sylvanas the new war chief. The Lich King told Vol'jin that he had nothing to do with it, and Sylvanas was in fact upsetting the balance of life and death, and then summoned ghouls to go after them. Then he lay dormant for the rest of the expansion. That is until Sylvanas Windrunner, the ousted war chief of the Horde, traveled to Icecrown to face Bolvar for unknown reasons. An intense fight commenced, which led to Bolvar being chained down by her magic, and Sylvanas ripped the Helm of Domination off of the Lich King's head. Bolvar thought she would put it on and told her that taking upon the mantle of the Lich King would be her prison. Sylvanas replied that this world is a prison. Sylvanas then promptly tore the Helm of Domination apart, thus tearing open a rift into the Shadowlands above Icecrown Citadel, and that comes to present day, this mysterious land known as the Shadowlands, which predates the Titans, the land of death. You can enter it, but it's said that you can't leave it. Except us as the adventurers, we can, for whatever reason. You know, Tyrannus Menethil once said that there must always be a Lich King, and for the first time, there isn't one. There isn't an entity to control the Scourge, so now we wait and see what this mysterious land has to offer. But that's it. That's the entire story of the Lich King from beginning to end. I hope you guys enjoyed this video. I make these types of lore videos once a year because they take a very long time to create. You can check my lore videos on Jaina, Thrall, and Sylvanas if you'd like. There will be a playlist linked at the end of the video. But feel free to leave a like on this video if you enjoyed it at all. Sub to the channel for more videos like this, and I will see you guys in the next video.
Father, is it over?
At long last. No king rules forever, my son.
I see. Only darkness.